some things that we're leaving out of the redistribution commands that are preventing these routes from being redistributed. Let's get back to, and we'll start where we left off with OSPF and try to get these EIGRP subnets in here. All right, first of all, we're in OSPF. Let's go ahead and correct this. No redistribute EIGRP 25. We're gonna run it back, throw a question mark here. As you can see, you got several different kind of what's happening, and appreciate you tapping into this video. I'll be doing a lab walkthrough for exam topic 1.4, which is troubleshooting redistribution between different routing protocols. More specifically for this video, I'm gonna do OSPF redistribution into EIGRP and vice versa. So that mutual redistribution between EIGRP and OSPF. So hopefully you find some value out of this video. And I got the lab already set up, so let me get out y'all way. So let me get y'all the setup. I know it's a lot right here. And as you can see, router 3 has definitely got it's got EIGRP running on it, OSPF, BGP, and even some static routing here. But for the purposes of this video, we're just going to be dealing with EIGRP AS25 and then OSPF protocols and just redistributing into both of them. All the redistribution is going to happen on R3, and then I will be checking R5 and R4. We will start off and get logged into R3, which I'm already logged in. I should be right here. So again, R3 is where the mutual redistribution is going to take place. Then we got R5 and R4 to check on the routes for the respective protocol. We will start here by just going into EIGRP AS25, and just to show you what I got right here as far as the config. Router EIGRP, it's got auto summary enabled. We're just routing for this network again, which is just this 172.16.0. This would be .4, this would be .3, this would be .3, .5, .6, so on and so forth. All right, so now that we got that out of the way, we're not doing anything here crazy with EIGRP, but we will redistribute OSPF, and that process is 1. And then we will go check to see if the EIGRP router has any redistributed OSPF routes. What we did right here, let's just look at this again. We went into router EIGRP, then we use this redistribute OSPF1. So any routes from OSPF1 right here should be redistributed into EIGRP. So we will go into router 4 to check that. We could go show IP route. And as you can see, there is nothing redistributed or injected into this as far as those routes that are on router 5, these OSPF routes, the 20.0.0.x route, even these other OSPF, even though they're in another area, they should also be injected into this EIGRP routing protocol, but they're not. Let's try to inject EIGRP routes into OSPF and see if they come out now. And then we'll go back and troubleshoot why our OSPF routes aren't making it into EIGRP. So now for that, we go back to R3. We're going to exit out of this routing protocol. Show you what I got running on OSPF. What do we got right here? Nothing, just a couple of network statements. Again, those networks with the areas that we've seen right there that are matching up with all of that. And we got router OSPF1, and then just that redistribute command that we threw in there. So we're going to go into router OSPF1, redistribute EIGRP 25. Now, we hit enter there. You'll get this message, only classful networks will be redistributed. So let's go into R4. And if you do a show run, section EIGRP, auto summary is on. So this will only advertise a classful network. So if we do show IP, interface brief, 172.16.0.4 does not fall in that classful network range for a class B private IP address. So this route should not make it over to R5. Hopefully this doesn't make a liar out of me. So if we do show IP route, as you can see, there is no EIGRP route for 172.16. So 0.0.4. There are some things that we're leaving out of the redistribution commands that are preventing these routes from being redistributed. Let's get back to, and we'll start where we left off with OSPF and try to get these EIGRP subnets in here. All right, first of all, we're in OSPF. Let's go ahead and correct this. No redistribute EIGRP 25. We're going to run it back, throw a question mark here. As you can see, you got several different kind of things that you could put here for EIGRP. Metric type, route map. What we want right now for the purposes of this lab is the keyword subnets. Subnets, what this means is that you'll be able to redistribute EIGRP classless networks. So now that we're able to inject our classless networks into OSPF, that should come up as an external OSPF route. If we do this right here, as you can see, it does come up as an external route. How do we know that? External OSPF E2, and that's the default for any OSPF external routes, is going to be type 2, which is referring to the metric that it's going to be redistributed with, and that default metric is 20. That is a configurable metric, but for the purposes of this video, again, we're just going to be going over that. We were successfully able to do that, and another way that you want to verify that you are able to receive these is if you go into these external routes, is if you go into the OSPF database, and then you go to, I usually go begin right here. As you can see, it is coming as a type 5 external route, and it's telling you where it's learning from and everything. But now, if you try to ping it though, even though we verified that we're learning all of this through the routing protocols, if we try to ping it, we are not going to be able to succeed. And the reason why it does that is because the EIGRP router here does not have a route back to any OSPF routes because the mutual redistribution is not complete. So once we're sending pings over here, yeah, they're making them over here, but the ping can't be sent back. The ping can't be sent back. Once it gets here, it doesn't know how to get back. It can come, so it's just like one-way traffic. If we were able to put like some kind of Wireshark analyzer, we'd see just one-way traffic flowing this way, right? So now we're going to go back into R3, and we're going to fix the redistribution statement for EIGRP routes on into the OSPF protocol on R3. So let's do that. Go back to R3, get out of here. And then we're going to go into router, OSPF1, do show run. Let's see what we still have here, right? I'm sorry, we're already in router OSPF1. We're going to get out of here, and we got to go into router EIGRP. You got to make sure where you're redistributing into or injecting the routes into. So we do a do show run section EIGRP. This is currently what we have. Redistribute OSPF1. What we want to do is say no. Redistribute OSPF1, and then we'll just run it back, right? Redistribute OSPF1, but this time we'll use our help, and as you can see, there's more options here. We have a match option, metric, route map, and verb. For this mutual redistribution for this lab, what we need to do is metric. Anytime you're redistributing EIGRP into any protocol, I don't care if it's BGP or if it's OSPF, you have to set a metric. The reason why is because with EIGRP, it has a default seed metric of infinity, meaning that it's unreachable. So when you're saying redistribute, by default, it's saying redistribute these unreachable routes. Doesn't make sense to me either, but you have to include this metric with EIGRP to make it work, and this is one of the most common mistakes when you're troubleshooting. And if you guys are definitely finding some value, please go ahead and subscribe and everything. I'm going to keep these videos coming for you. We're going to use metric, and then you could just question mark this out. It's just the metrics that you got to feed it. So in kilobits per second, the bandwidth that you want, the bandwidth metric you want to set, you can set this to 1 million. I set it to 100,000, whatever that is. I don't know the conversion. Knock yourself out and figure it out. And then EIGRP delay. I don't want no delay, so I put that as a 1. Is this reliable? 255 is reliable. Something about more effective bandwidth. I just put 100 here. And then we got the MTU. And then you could just use a default, which would be 1500 MTU. Again, these metric attributes, you would have to, depending on what kind of network you're working with, you would have to definitely get a baseline of all the traffic and the links and everything to do that. But now, if we hit end on that, let's do a show run section EIGRP. Now look at our redistribution statement. We got one with EIGRP. And remember, when you're redistributing into EIGRP, you always have to have a metric. And then as far as OSPF, what we learned today, we do show run section OSPF. We learned today that you have to include the keyword subnets when you're redistributing any kind of classless networks into OSPF. You're gonna, or into any routing protocol. If you don't use subnets, it's only gonna advertise the classful networks. All right, so now that we finished that, let's hop into R5 and verify our routing from here. So if we do show IP route now, look at what we have here. We have 172.16.0. Now let's see if we can ping it. And now it's pingable, as you can see, where it wasn't before. Let's go on to R4. Remember, this is what it looked like before we made our changes. This is what it looks like after. And as you can see, we have the OSPF external routes right here. And we can get over there and we learn them now through that redistribution. If you ever get into a lab and you want to mess with this, or if you're on an exam and they, instead of using this default, remember this is the default of the type of routes, external routes that OSPF uses for when they're being redistributed, and it deals with that metric right here, sorry, of 20, that default metric. What I'm going to do now is we're going to redistribute a static route that's on this guy. We're going to redistribute this route into the OSPF protocol, but instead of using that default metric of type 2, I'm just going to use one of type 1. So we're going to go in here, conf t. All right, so to do that, you just go in here, conf t, router, OSPF1, redistribute, and we have other options, right? Static, right there, as you see. I want to redistribute my static routes. Static. What's our other option after that? We have that metric again, remember, but we don't want to use that. That was for EIGRP. You can use it in OSPF, but it's not needed, at least for this purpose of this video. What I wanted to do was this metric type. I want to change the metric type, and you could set it to type 1 or type 2 metrics. So we'll set this to type 1. And all type 1 does is add the default metric of the link and combine it with the default metric of the redistribution and for OSPF. So the default seed metric for OSPF is 20, and the static route is 1. This route should be redistributed with a 21 metric after I do that. Oh, let me it's only going to redistribute the classful because I forgot the keyword subnets on the end. Okay, now we can look into our other OSPF router here, R3. We do a show IP route. We see an OSPF learned route, but this time with the E1 on there. And we have a metric of 22. I said 21, but I forgot to take in the fact, and you should remember too, that it counts all the links. Just to show you, if I go into R5 and look at that static route again, this static route is pointing to 20.1.6, which is on router 6. And this is where this IP address lives. So let's count the links. From R3, this link is a directly connected link. So that's worth 1. And the link to get to the actual IP address is another directly connected link, which is 1 as well. So the default seed metric for redistribution into OSPF is going to be 20, and then you have 1 and 2. So that's where we go back into R3, we get to 22. All right, guys, that was pretty much it. Again, we went over mutual redistribution and then just 2 common things. When you're redistributing into OSPF, you definitely want to use that keyword subnets if you want to include classless routes or classless networks, in your redistribution. And also, if you want to have OSPF include the cost of the links in the metric instead of using that default seed metric to have a more accurate kind of metric for your routes, all you have to do is just change that metric type in your redistribution command on whatever router in the OSPF protocol that's doing the redistribution. You set that metric type to 1, and then it will do it in the background and add up all the links for you and put it to that default cost of 20. And then going the other way, when you're redistributing EIGRP routes into any routing protocol, make sure, I'm sure they're going to test us on this for anybody that's going to be going for this exam before they switch it up on us as well, is to make sure to use that metric keyword and set a metric for that, because again, if you don't, by default, the seed metric for EIGRP is infinity, meaning it's unreachable, meaning when I'm redistributing these routes into this routing protocol, or I'm injecting them, or I'm converting these routes into this routing protocol, they are unreachable. Again, thanks to everybody for viewing. Please share, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what's going on, and I'll see y'all on that next video. I'll let your boy.